On to the final hour of Fixing the Nation this Thursday. Remember, we shall end this hour with Jano dancing for us. She promised it early this morning. I'll put it out there again.
Viva Jano! Viva!
Meanwhile, our guys at the NTV newsroom are really working hard, tracking whatever is happening around the country. And we have what we call the news fix. Jano, you want to go first?
Yep, there's the Moy University site, and I'll start with Moy University. Moy University in crisis, lecturers strike over unpaid salaries. Now, lecturers at Moy University have issued a strike notice over the non-payment of their February salaries, escalating a long-running financial crisis at the institution. The strike, called by the University Academic Staff Union, adds to a series of disruptions that have plagued the university in recent years due to persistent cash flow challenges. Some of the key highlights include unpaid salaries, lecturers demanding immediate payment of their February salaries, financial woes. Moy University has faced a deepening financial crisis with recurring salary delays and claims of mismanagement, academic disruptions. The strike threatens to derail ongoing classes and examinations, which obviously impacts thousands of students. Union's ultimatum. There's an ultimatum that's been given the university management a short window to settle salary arrears, failure to which the strike will proceed indefinitely. So what does this mean? We've talked about it countless times. Students will be affected. The looming strike will halt academic programs. University under pressure. The administration faces mounting scrutiny over financial mismanagement, and the intervention is really needed. Students, pressure, missing out on classes, administration.
It's the worst time
it
to
really
be
is.
admitted to the Moy University.
Or to any public university. There was a piece about how many universities, public ones, are technically insolvent. The University of Nairobi, for example, is about 13 billion shillings in debt. A lot of that because capitation funds are not received on time, if ever. And I think Technical University was in an almost similar situation. It just tells you that there's a problem, and it starts from up there, and it's trickling down to the education system, down to the learner. Last mile ni learner sasa.
Exactly.
Saiton, financial issues, guys. We're still in that realm. Saiton boss barred from resigning amid investor dispute. Did you know it was possible to be barred from resigning? Yeah. Patricia Wanjama, Chief Operating Officer of Saiton Investments, has been barred from resigning following a court order linked to investor disputes. The decision comes as investors seek accountability over billions of shillings locked in stalled real estate projects and unredeemed funds. Now, the court order halted her resignation because of the ongoing legal battles, and thousands of investors are still waiting for payouts from Saiton's real estate projects, including their high-yield solutions fund. That's already so attractive. It's a high-yield solutions fund. You can see why people would want to, of course, invest. And there's been questions around corporate governance, leadership, and accountability within Saiton, which has faced liquidity struggles and legal battles. So a lot of people are still on edge, investors especially. They're fearing further delays in recovering their investments as the legal tussle continues. So as of now, we're saying, hawezi toroka kabla we hold you accountable, Patricia. You can't resign while we're in the middle of trying to figure things out. This is not the time. This is not a time to have integrity and leave the job. Basically.
Right. Now, we know about illegal gas refilling plants, and this has been a concern. Remember Mradi was an illegal gas refilling plant that exploded and just left destruction and devastation, deaths, and maiming of many people. Now, the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority has issued a strict directive requiring all gas refilling plants to install CCTV cameras or risk losing their operating permits. The move aims to enhance safety, improve monitoring, and curb illegal gas refilling activities that have been linked to deadly accidents and tax evasion. So, the directive follows past incidents of gas explosion and fires, with IPRA seeking to minimize risk through better oversight. What this means for businesses is that increased compliance costs. Gas refilling business must invest in CCTV systems to continue operating. I'd like to know, though, what the requirement is here. So I shall have a CCTV in my place.
And then?
And that's how I shall get a license. And if I don't have a license, if I don't have a CCTV, I don't get a license. Sawa. I am operating illegally. Okay? If I put a CCTV, am I okay?
No, I don't think it works like that. It's just, I think it's an additional measure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a CCTV. Am I required to link it to the IPRA portal so that APRA can constantly and at any moment monitor? Okay. Or is it that I'll have a CCTV that's recording, and this recording will stay in place for 7 days, and then APRA can be coming in and saying, Fungwa your CCTV, rewind up. So what are they looking?
Also, you can't see a gas leak. That's the one that...
I don't know where the CCTV comes into licensing gas refilling stations.
Just to see if there's any foul play, and then they kind of take it from there.
I mean, I get the, wanting to see if there's any foul play, but then unless there's someone monitoring it, like he's saying, 24/7 for foul play to check, is everyone who is there, do they have a badge? Do they have a reflector or something of the sort? Are they meant to be there? That person's looks, unless you have the capacity to look at that footage 24/7. But if it's what he's saying, which is we store the footage, have CCTV running, in the event of an incident, the footage is somewhere in the cloud and we can look.
So, right, yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, that makes sense.
After an accident, then you come and review what happened.
Not that...
Anyway, the selection panel for new members of the IEBC is entering a crucial phase as the interviews now go for commissioners. And already they have started this first day of interviewing the commissioners. Following the conclusion of interviews for the chairperson's position, that brought the IEBC reconstitution process one step closer to completion. Once appointed, the new commissioners will oversee upcoming by-elections and in the long run be responsible for delivering Kenya's 2027 general election. They will also have to review the commission, the boundaries and all, okay? So this is it. It's already started. The commission, the interviews for candidates for commissioner, there were very many. 1,333 Kenyans had applied for the commissioner positions. 1,078 of them were men. That's about 80% were men. 237 were women. It's about 17% of the applicants were women. And 18 applicants, that's about 1.35%, did not attach ID documents. I wonder, okay. We had been invited to select, to submit any sworn statements or memoranda regarding any of all these candidates. Now, as we get into this conversation next, is the list of the 1,333 that had applied was published. Those that have been shortlisted now to come for interviews have also been published, and they're there. And you can already see it was only less than 18% of those that had applied were women. That already brings a problem, and we can also discuss this as we have this conversation on why is it that not as many women had applied to be commissioners as men. And it's not only in this commission, by the way. In many positions that are advertised, you always see that the women applicants are fewer. Why? Okay, then now let's look at the 11 that were interviewed until yesterday for the position of chairperson and how the interviews went. What did we feel and think about their performance? Right? And how did they fare? This is why we want to ask you to join us in this conversation as we all together review, and you tell us what you thought of the candidates, what you thought of the interview process, the quality of questions being asked to the candidates, the quality of answers being given by the candidates, and whether any of them then made you feel, okay, yes, I think we have somebody here who could be a suitable chairperson. The first day had Charles Nyachai, Ms. Amadi, Abdul Kadir Lorot, Ramadhan, and Edward Katama Ngewa as the ones who were interviewed on the first day. The second day, we had Erastus Edung Ethekon, Francis Kakai Kissinger, Jacob Ngoele Muvengei, and Joy Brenda Masinda Mdivo. And then yesterday, we had Lilian Wanjiku Manegene, Robert Akumu Asembo, and Saul Simiu Wasilwa. They were interviewed. Let's play the clips for some of those who were interviewed on the first day and then see. This is Charles Nyachai, Ms. Amadi, the former Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Abdul Kadir Lorot, Ramadan, and Edward Ngwewa.
I think we can start with
Isaac Hassan, the former chair IEBC. Actually, in his book, he talks of to be a chair of the Electoral Commission. he called some 3 Gs. And one of the 2 Gs that I remember is that you need to have grandchildren. Maybe looks are deceiving. I don't know. But at the age of 48, going to 49, I think this is the prime.
That other Kenyan who hears that and hears that the selection panel is considering Joy, who is deeply involved in internal primary elections of UDA.
It's not about the Murengo. Here I'm offering myself as a Kenyan, not for tokenism, not for show, not for bonga points. I actually think I've got something to offer my country.
I'm a very courageous person. I don't look it, but I am. And I always know that if I'm doing the right thing, then I'm guided from high up. I draw my strength from sticking to the truth, what is true, because the truth can never become a lie.
I do not intend to lose my life in serving the people of Kenya as chair or commissioner of IEBC, and I have no intention at any point of compromising on integrity. And I think it's defeatist.
By the time the vetting board was making a finding, it said that I am hardworking, I am forthright and honest. And I think that those will be the hallmarks of anyone who wants to be received in any career.
Right. Hardworking, forthright, honest, truly. There should be the hallmarks of someone who is IEBC chair. They've all got such very, very interesting, like quotable quotes that you can just take away and work with. Yeah. The one for Anna Madi's, I think what captured a lot of people's attention when she spoke about, I'm courageous.
I'm tough.
I don't look like it, but hey, don't mess with me. And I'm saying we asked people, who do you think should be the next IEBC chair? And a lot of people in our X comments are speaking to Miss Anna Madi, like Dan Omar. It's Kinyo Abala says, by design, Anna Madi will be the IEBC chairperson. Would you care to expound, Kinyo? Would you care to expound?
By design?
By design. A.O. Akayo says, I vouch for Anna Madi. There's also other candidates there. Senator Geoffrey AY 36, many numbers there. Madam Amadi. I'm wondering what it was about her interview that stuck with people, or is it the fact that we've seen her in the limelight before as former registrar, that we have faith in her? Is it that, or is it the interview, or is it an amalgamation of all those things?
Very interesting. I was going to take it back a little bit as we continue to talk about who people think would be the best candidate and talk about the applications. I'm probably stepping out a bit, but those numbers of 80% men and 17% women when it comes to the commission really struck me. I look at the numbers initially, I'm thrown off, then I think, yeah, well, if you look at the systems, if you look at political patronage, which a lot of women are not necessarily part of the patronage network or system, if I can put it that way. Just the systems. People don't like hearing the word patriarchy, but I think that is one thing to look at. And maybe another one is...
I don't get it. Okay, just continue.
It's okay. You can counter before I dance.
I'm not countering. I just want to understand.
You just want to understand. And then I think the other one is, we've talked about, somebody put it so well. I think it was one of the among the many young, amazing people we've had on the show, and she said, if you want to have anything to do with IEBC, it's 1,000 ways to die. We had Charles and Chai saying, me, I'm not going to lose my life. And I think, again, that kind of discourages a lot of people. I don't want to say specifically women, but as a woman, for example, I would also say, do I want to? I know that I'm competent. I know that I'm able. I know that I'm courageous. I know that I have integrity. I could deliver on this job. But then I worry about whether I'm going to be not just co-opted, whether my life is going to be in danger. That point there is very valid.
Okay. I hear you, and it cuts across.
It does.
All right? Everybody who looks at it and feels, I've seen the kind of job that this is. I've seen the people who've become commissioners before. I've seen those who are in the Isaac Hassan Commission, all of them disgraced publicly and forced to leave office. They were paid marupurupu chukweni pesa kwendeni.
Yeah.
Even before that, the Kivuitu Commission, after the 2007 election, they were all told, you guys, kwendeni. After that, the second commission that came in, we saw the battles that the former chairman, what was his name? The late... Chebukati.
Yeah. Yes.
In the first election of 2013, the kind of push and pull that there was within that commission, or versus Chebukati versus the boss of the election after the 2017, it's just too much. So anybody, you would say anybody would look at it and say, okay, I feel that maybe I don't want to apply. But then there are many people in their thousands who are applying. Now, I do not understand why in a country that has 50-50 gender balance, 50% men, it's just almost 50-50, just 51-49.
Yeah.
50-50 men, 50% women, only 17% of women would actually apply. And I'm sure there's more than 17% of women who qualify for position of IEBC commissioner. I'm sure, even if you want beyond this and look at the applications, application for National Police Service Commission, application for any of the commissions that are advertised, application for many jobs, you'll find fewer women applying. I don't understand why.
I do.
Explain to me.
It's clear as day from over here, but...
Do you want to also...
Please explain to me.
Contribute?
Mariam, let's start with positions are advertised for Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya.
Right.
Okay? You see more men than women applying for position of Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. You see more women applying for position of Deputy Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. Explain.
I agree with you. I don't think there's a lack of qualified women for any of those positions. There's so many things that we could talk about as far as women applying for positions, especially when there's always the doubt of, oh, am I qualified? Am I this? But I think for these specific positions, it's murky water that a lot of women just don't want to get into. That's simply it. I have the prerequisite qualification. I would do a great job at it, but what she said, what am I getting into? I'm going to swim into it's quicksand, basically. You just sink slowly and you can't do anything because what you're surrounded by is just a cesspool of either bad governance or, a tough job or political pressures or
so it's murky
threats
water,
to your
so
life.
you feel that you are not suitable for it?
No, you're suitable on paper, perhaps not suitable for the murkiness.
So
That's
you fear that you'll get dirty?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that the dirt will consume me, whether or not beyond what I would have anticipated.
Okay.
It's interesting.
So how do we fix that? Is it a courage issue?
And that's why I was just going to say, her talking about courage, she was coming from a place of fully understanding what she's trying to say. And even when she was saying, I know I may not look it, and some people will be like, oh, what does that mean? There's so many ways I think she operates from a place of quiet power, because overt power sometimes gets a woman bullied. If a guy comes in and he's strong and bold, he's got leadership qualities, a woman is bossy. By the way, disclaimer, I know a lot of this is changing. It has shifted. Over the last 30 years, we've seen it shift. However, it doesn't mean when you hear the Ahmadis, when you hear the Martha Karuas, they all say the same thing. They're like, these spaces, these largely male-dominated spaces, it takes a certain kind of courage, capacity, bandwidth, community. You have to have a community around you that cushions you when you are humiliated publicly. While we understand it's the same for men, you're now thinking for those who are mothers, wives, aunties. So you're thinking, I need a community that understands if anything happens, will you cushion me? Will you catch me when I fall? Because my fall is harder and my getting up is even harder. Why? We have to say it as it is. These are male-dominated spaces. Whether or not that's right or wrong, it is what it is. And if it's male-dominated, it means I come in as a minority, and I come in as somebody who, because of, again, things like political patronage and patriarchy, I could stand to be bullied, kicked out, pushed out, humiliated, in a way that's harder for me to recover from because of the ecosystem I support, and because of the fact that yeah, I'll have to recover in so many other ways.
True. If
How do we fix it? Let me ask you.
If you fail,
do you remember
Eric
who
has
was?
failed.
Do you remember who
If
was?
Jano fails,
Yeah.
for some reason she
She
failed
failed
all
'cause she-
womankind.
yeah, 'cause she's-
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
How
Do
we
you
fix it?
remember who was Isaac Hassan's chairperson at IEBC in 2013? Do you remember Isaac Hassan?
Yes, yes, yes.
Do you
of
remember
course.
Commissioner Letangule?
Yeah.
Yes.
Remind me. The vice chairperson who was fired the same way as Isaac Hassan was a woman.
Yeah.
Do you remember Chebukati's first vice chairperson?
Was it Roslyn?
No.
No.
Roslyn was just a commissioner.
Okay.
She resigned.
Okay.
The vice chairperson for Chebukati in 2017 resigned. Okay?
Okay.
Now, the fall, as we publicize, as people were rolling on the streets, they were saying Chebukati must go. Okay? They were not mentioning the woman. So I'm just pushing back here and saying, yes, okay, yeah, there's the fall, there's this, but we have seen.
But
We have-
vice
we have-
chairs are.
we
No one
have
ever
seen
looks
here.
at the vice chair.
Exactly. So do people look at the commissioners? If they're not looking at the vice chair, so why aren't you applying for the commissioner position?
Hey, yes,
Do we
again,
remember the commissioners who were fired alongside Kina Letangule with Isaac Hassan?
No.
Women.
Yes.
Do you remember the women who were fired? Did they fall just as hard as the men?
Maybe they didn't publicize how hard their fall was, because the fall isn't just what you see. The fall is what you have to deal with. And again,
Where?
if you in your community,
You don't exist in a bubble.
You don't.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, you
Do
don't.
you know what Isaac Hassan went through when he was fired?
Yeah.
Publicly. He has written it in a book.
Absolutely.
He has talked about what he had to deal with.
Yeah. By the way, we're not undermining. I
Or
will never
discounting.
undermine what the men and women. Not at all. I mean, it's ugly. It's public. It's incessant. Even in death. Let's just say it. It
And
follows
I am not.
you.
What I'm just trying to push
Is-
back
is
here.
trying to- uh-huh.
What I'm trying to push back here is
Why
and
women don't
not
apply.
on this. I'm just saying, when we continue with this narrative, we sort of also entrench the fear. The fear for women to join in. The fear for women to, because they can hear that Jano is also saying this is what happened.
No, Jano is highlighting, but she's coming back to see. We have
Eric,
She's
Charles Nyachai
highlighting
just
it.
said, I am not coming here to die for my country.
Yeah, and nobody
That's-
should.
Yes.
I mean,
but what does that tell you
I
about
think
the idea we have of the IEBC jobs
what
already?
question was he asked? Charles Nyachai was responding to a specific question.
Yes.
And he was saying, look, I'm not coming to take this job so that I do the wrong thing so that then I die for. No, I am coming to do things the right way. That's what he was saying.
Yes.
He was not saying that, you know what, if you guys start, I will. No, that's not what Charles
Yeah,
Nyachai was
Jano,
saying.
Mariam, we're not saying these things to deter. If anything, we've seen how many women, well, I was going to say for the chair, at least we saw a pretty decent balance, if that's a word. We saw, candidates. But it psychologically, when you think about even the women who run for political office, the same things that follow them are the very same things that follow, I think, a lot of these commissions. Beyond IEBC, there's so many commissions that, don't have as many women and men. So we're not entrenching this fear. We're simply highlighting it and saying, how do we fix it? I know we're going into a break soon and we can come back and speak to that. We're already beginning to fix it by highlighting these interviews, for example, and seeing formidable people who are considered formidable men, people who are considered formidable women. That's one thing. Looking at it and saying, oh, okay, interesting. I really like her answer. I like his too. I'm following, not just because she's a woman, but because she's somebody who seems to come across as a woman who can take this seat. But I still want us to go back to the commissions and think about how we can shift that narrative. But it goes back to shifting or fixing the systems within which these people have to participate. Because there's bullying, there's patronage, there's sexism, there's gaslighting, and there's lack of safety. There's danger in it all. So you ask yourself, do I want to risk my reputation, my life, my marriage, my family, to do something that may set me back 10, 15 years, only to be further maybe humiliated or gaslit by a system and a structure that is beyond my control, that is called patriarchy. That doesn't exist as a buzzword, but it exists as a reality.
Yeah, but then let us go beyond that and encourage. So the first chief registrar of the judiciary was a woman. She was removed from office in scandalous ways in which you could say, because of her gender, because of this and the other. The second chief registrar of the judiciary was a woman, served the entire 10-year term. okay? And she served it well. And she's courageous enough to say, I applied for that, I did the job, I have applied for chairperson of the IEBC, and I'm putting myself front and out there. And I think we need to see more of such Amadis coming out to say, I applied because I believed.
And Joyce and the others,
To see Martha Koome saying, I applied to be the Chief Justice because I believed I could perform the job of Chief Justice. I did not just say, I'm going for the Deputy Chief Justice position, because we had seen many more women going for the Deputy Chief Justice position and fewer going for the Chief Justice position. She did it. She's a Chief Justice.
Fair. I'm not at leastising as we go into a break, but at least we've seen women shortlisted for chair. When the chairperson of the IEBC selection panel was here, I asked him, where are the young people? Oh, sorry, actually, no break. Fantastic.
Good.
We asked him, where are the young people as far as this is concerned, as far as your shortlisting is concerned? And we talked about the qualifications for these jobs, the fact that you need 15 years experience to be a chairperson, and you need about 10 years experience to be a commissioner, which would effectively very easily lock someone out. 10 years, 15 years experience is quite a bit of time for young folks. Now, we're looking at the chairperson selections. I don't think any of those is under 35. Now, for the commissioners, they've not given us a list with people's, dates of birth and, who is this old and who is that old. But I am very, very curious to see how, in a time when you're trying to bring in a generation that refused to vote largely the last time, that you have no representation or very little representation of young people at that table. That's my next concern. And I'm not moving away from that conversation around how do we get women more involved, but I'm also now worried about where the young people at this table, that is the IEBC selection.
Exactly, which was also critical. You've raised those critical points, Mariam, and I've just immediately thought about the new setup of the leadership in Namibia, right, where the president, vice president, and I believe the third person is the.
They don't have a PM. So
they don't have one, but there's three. So I'll confirm it. We've come a long way, right, in terms of representation, in terms of equality. But I think sometimes you also gauge the temperature and mood of a country. And let's come back to Kenya. Let's come back to Latif's point about saying we should encourage. We can encourage, but people also tend to read the room and read the tone and also just read the happenings of a country. If you are seeing rising cases of violence, harassment, all of these things add up. You cannot really kind of like live in a monolith and say, I'm just one separated from these issues. That's why the big buzzword is called intersectional.
Right.
They kind of relate to each other.
Everything is tied.
Everything is tied. So maybe capacity building could be one way to say, let's have more capacity building sessions to not only amplify women of merit, but also to talk about courage in the face of storms that a lot of men are able to face head on, not because they're any less scared, but because perhaps they have a system or a community and a network that allows them to fail, fall back, stand up again, that women may not always be privy to. So
women
capacity
have
building.
better, stronger social communities and support systems.
Not necessarily when it comes to matters around politics and policy and commission.
Not necessarily bit is where I say now this is where the buzzwords start.
No, this is where the capacity building comes.
Bit is where if you have a very strong social network that supports, and we see it, all right, we see it. This is what we should be saying. It's there. Just go forth and do it. Go forth and apply.
Yeah. No, this is what I've been saying at certain forums of late. And I said it over the weekend when there was hundreds of women gathered in a room. And I said, you know what we need to do now is we need to rise behind each other. Because sometimes you assume, some women do have a strong social network, but sometimes when things become murky, muddy, scary, there's a sense when sometimes you're left in isolation, right? Because I'm like, I don't know that I want to attach myself to that mess. I don't know that I have it in me. And so there's an assumption. That's why I challenged people in the room. And I said, we're saying we want younger people, young men, young women, women. Okay, then please be a community that sustains this momentum and cushioning for the long haul. Don't drop out and drop back because things have gotten messy, because guess what? They will. It's part of leadership. It's part of just building a community and society. And again, like I said, people like Martha Kura have spoken to it as well, and saying, I had to really start building and falling and having a community rally behind me from as far back as the 90s. Because you look ahead and you know that the only way to keep going and to keep following your true north is to know that this social network is going to stand by me.
It's
not guaranteed.
It's a safety net.
It's a safety net. And and I said that. So I'm also challenging the stereotypes, Latif, to your point. I'm not just highlighting them, I'm challenging them. And I said, please make sure you're not just in this room saying, wow, this was an incredible summit, because it was. Now, what are you doing with that wow after this?
Right.
How are you?
Next?
Yeah, how are you championing somebody who says, guess what, I want to run 2027. I know I can do this. How are we then rallying behind her?
Yeah.
Not just saying, you go girl, but also how are you holding her accountable? Because it's holistic. Then you're solidifying it, and then you're following through with it. That's how you do it.
I don't want to speak on behalf of young women or young people,
Right.
but I am speculating here. Eric, your question was quite simply, you know, what's the fear? What's the problem here, right? Why aren't women applying for these roles? And I think, Janet, you've really, really tried to answer it. I think my question would be, how do we get more women at the table? I think the why, whether it's fear, quote unquote, whether it's you don't want to get in the murkiness, the why exists, the then what next? But they're already there. We've seen them at least at the chair level, like you said. For the chairperson, at least we saw adequate representation of women. That's a good place to start. Hope it's the same for the commissioners. Now the next one, and I'm going back to it, is young people. How do we get them at that table?
Yeah.
And not in a tokenistic
No.
way. Not in a, we must have 1/3, we must, no. Like, I don't get it. Because you've already locked out young people by your having these eligibility criteria that require you to have 15 years experience. They're out. Then again, you want to do voter registration drives. You want to have a push and a pull. You want to have young people feel represented in electoral matters, but they don't see themselves there. I don't know how we do that. That's my actual, I don't know.
You're genuinely asking. I know we're going to go back and listen to some of the other bites for the IEBC chair candidates who are vetted this week. So we'll go back. In just a moment, Jackson will bring up the 4 from day 2, if I'm not mistaken. My guess, Mariam, is not if I'm guaranteed, but if I know that you're going to shoulder me in my darkest and lowest moments, I'll run. 100%. If I know, because the storm will come. I always tell people progress comes with persecution. You can't escape it. You will be persecuted because you're shifting and pushing back. It shouldn't get you fearful. It is actually part of the process. But if I don't feel like, if I feel like it's going to be solitary, if it's going to be a solitary journey in my highs and lows, I don't know what my bandwidth is to survive that. But if I know that there's a community that says, let's say we're called IEBC Youth Support Network, IEBC Commission Youth Support Network,
Right.
and we're saying, listen, we're 30 of us as a start. We're behind you.
We've got your back.
We've got your back. We feel like you're qualified. We feel like you have integrity. We feel like your heart is in the right place. Your head is in the right place. You're courageous. We've got you. We'll also call you out when we feel like you're doing this way. Just go. Yes, it's not going to be easy. You're going to sweat in front of many people. You're going to be faced with so much at the time of elections.
Right.
But we are here as the 30 of us to say, when it's high, when it's low, we're going to shoulder you. I always take an example of the Amujai Leaders Network that Ellen Surley founded, where women who want to run for political office. And I remember speaking to one of them who was an opposition leader from Zimbabwe. And I spoke to her and I asked her, what has the network done for you? She said, there was a time when, because I'm an opposition leader, I was attacked. I was threatened, as they usually do for female candidates. They'll come for your body, your family. And she said she was broken. And then she said the network rallied on a Zoom and said, what do you need? Do you need courage? Okay, we'll give you courage. What else do you need? Do you need psychosocial support? Sawa.
We'll give you.
Okay, do you need some counsel? That thing that you said was a bit inflammatory. Can we talk about how to perhaps approach these kinds of conversations? And so she turned to me and said, that's why, Janet, that's why I feel that if I even ever wanted to run for president or a ministerial role appointment in Zimbabwe, I'll be good because I have them. We need to replicate the Amujai Leaders Network across the board.
Yes.
But I think we can. I know you wanted to respond to something.
No, I agree, and I get the hesitation, the want to have more women in these positions, applying for those positions. I get that we can't operate from a place of fear, because then we perpetuate that culture of fear, and then the next, so then we have the goon state, which is what Diana said earlier. Yeah, because then if all the quote-unquote upright people stay away from the job, then what does that leave you with? Who's in those positions?
Because we need to occupy those positions.
Right.
So there was...
There were people that we went to the streets yesterday and asked, what's your feel of the interviews that have been conducted so far? Do you feel that any of them meets the master? But also, we asked the people, what would you pick as the quality for the next IEBC chairperson and the commissioners? And here are some of those responses.
Ideally, we would actually want someone who's actually very transparent. Actually, the precise word is integrity. Integrity in all aspects. Number one, he'll ensure that whatever Kenyans may vote in the day of election, itakuwa reflected aki-announce results.
Nataka mtu ambaye atakuwa neutral. Mimi napenda hivyo. Mtu atakuwa neutral. Kama ni fulani ameshinda, akutangazie yule mwenye ameshinda kwa ukwe. Ujue hata kama mimi nilipiga hapa na huyu ameshindwa, kuna kushindwa na kushinda. Lakini sio ile inafika mahali mnakuja kuambua fulana ameshinda. Mwisho wake inaleta vita Kenya. Inaleta uadui. Hatutaki uadui tena. Hatutaki mambo ya vita. Kwa hivyo watu mwenye atawekwa wakuwe neutral. Hata kuna kitu imekuwa ati waina wameenda huku, watatu wako huku.
Kibaya ni Wakenya tumekuwa so corrupt. Na being corrupt, hatusemi kuanza hapa chini. Corruption Kenya yetu imeanza pale juu. Na chairman kama anachaguliwa, let be fair na free election hiyo chairman mwenye atasimamia Wakenya na atajua vile Wakenya wanataka.
Expectations. I mean, people have expectations. Integrity is a big issue, right? And somebody who, in very many ways, integrity is very subjective. Because you're looking and wondering whether this person has conducted themselves with integrity, and you're judging from what you know of them, what you've seen of them, the associations that you attach with them. So some people saying, oh, this person looks like, we are lean kwa hii side, we are lean kwa hii side. It's all just a perception issue. And then that also comes and clouds your judgment of their integrity as well.
And their neutrality,
Their neutrality. Those are ingredients of what is going on in this one.
Right.
But now moving the conversation into now seeing the candidates who are interviewed, seeing the others who have been shortlisted, and there were many the others who have been shortlisted who are coming in for the interviews for the commissioners, and there are very many. Then you also ask yourself, shall we get the right people? What should we be looking out for when you are watching the interviews? Is it how they answer the question? Is it somebody who is a good orator? Is it somebody's CV? What is it that you look out for? What are you looking out for when you're watching that interview like this?
That's
I think we have a job.
I think for a lot of people, that's exactly it. Because you've said integrity is so subjective. Also, how do I, even before the subjectivity, I can very easily verify your credentials. Oh, you have this much experience, you've worked here and here, you went to school here. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Integrity? Unless I'm going back to your interactions, your workplaces, and interviewing the people who've worked with you, talking to your family. And in some, actually there are organizations like that do that.
Yeah.
So maybe is that something we should look into?
Remember the integrity scorecard conversation?
Yes, we're right back.
That would, you do have to do some going back into. We extend grace because sometimes people change. We've seen a lot of cancel culture around tweets from 2009, and maybe now you're a completely different person.
Yeah.
Or you had a certain mindset in 2010.
Yeah.
You interact with people differently. You learned, you grew up, you did a self-audit and said, I hold myself accountable for the things I said. I am no longer that person.
And I feel that the selection panel is not doing that, and they ought to have. They also have done something and come up with questions of saying, we looked through your social media, we looked through your work history, we looked through your commentary. Joy Brenda Mdivo. Okay, here you are, you're speaking very well, you're qualified, and we see in the 2022 elections, you served in the campaign for the Kenya Kwanza as an advisor to the Kenya Kwanza presidential campaign, right? How can you assure Kenyans that you would not be biased in the next campaign, because the same people that you worked with and for will be on the ballot again? You know? So how do you raise those questions? Asking such questions.
But we're getting a lot of how many constituency, what was it? Was it how many constituencies? Someone was asked that, or how many electoral units?
In the last election.
Yeah, in the last election. I see your point.
There's that bit of seeking to understand whether you actually understand our election system.
And
the job,
I get. But those are, I can Google that, you know. I could just be like,
chop,
okay.
chop.
Yeah, very quickly. The other one though, figuring out, I have questions about your loyalties, where they lie, and if they could affect your ability to do this role. That's the real question. So someone said that this is a more stringent interview than the CS ones. This was on X, and I said, is it?
Yeah, was the approach as detailed? Somebody here has thrown a spanner in the works. First of all, their username on YouTube is Spooky Haha. They say, you need to understand, their chair is already chosen. This is just a show of procedure.
That's, again, another public perception.
It is.
And that's the job of the selection panel, to make us feel that, no, we don't care. We are not under any external influence. Next.
No, somebody here just mentioned, I think somebody else could have been better. Somebody who doesn't have any tribal affiliations or corruption.
Someone says, if Jesus was on the list, let me get his name because I don't want
the way he started.
Yeah, if Jesus was on the list, they would have still picked someone else. This is what's his name? Yeah, piece of art. They would have still picked someone else. Revolution says none of the above. It depends. The comments are harsh, guys. I can't even read
You're
them.
even trying to edit them.
I'm editing them in real time. I'm wondering why we already have a preconception of even the people who apply, leave alone
so
the
people
job.
Don't trust
that it's
the process.
cronyism. People don't trust the process.
Yes, we don't trust the process.
And people go back to 2007. They just remember how the chairs, how they either responded when they were asked questions, and then you look at every subsequent election following that. A part of me is like, I know that we come with that baggage. How are we holding out or extending hope for this next process? People are trying to balance the two, but because there've been so many, they're so disenfranchised with what they've seen the last 3, 4, 5 elections. That's what's clouding people's judgment and saying, I don't know, this just seems like another. We have to take something, but we already know who we've chosen. But is there room for us to say, you know what? Let's trust. If these people applied, number one, I'm sitting home making noise. I didn't apply. Sawa. Let's at least give these folks a chance because they went out of their way to apply.
True.
Number two, let's see what happens after these interview process, and then let's begin to meet these people, understand them. Only when we really see alarm bells going off, whatever those may look like, is when we can say, now we're falling back to the baggage that we had initially. But maybe
I think the alarm bells should be ringing now. They might not be like super big alarm bells, but just giving our feedback, even if it's on X, on here, on, TikTok, whichever platform you are, and just being like, I don't like the way they answered the question around, their integrity, because they said, how can you question me? I don't, that pushback. And if they make appointments at the end of the day, and we're like, no, universally we agreed that this is not the right person for the job for XY reasons. How are you putting them? Then we can start questioning and being like, do we have a fair process here? Or is this the beginning of a long road to a tumultuous 2027?
Yeah, and a pattern we've seen before. I don't know whether we should bring up some of the other sound bites from the interviewees.
I think we played
most of them
that we had wanted to sample.
Kissinger.
Kakai Kissinger is among those who were interviewed on the second day, and others. Let's listen to Advocate Kakai Kissinger.
Not all public officers, ladies and gentlemen, not all public officers who are dragged and taken to court are guilty of what they're accused of. Kenyans should never, never, never accuse or hear something has happened to somebody and think that that person is associated with that thing.
If we were to make you the chair of the commission, and then one of those cases succeeds, of course, the country would have to seek another chair. I just want you to explain to the selection panel and the chair why we should take that risk, because they are pending issues.
Those issues can be resolved, and you say if they are resolved in my positive way, so when the commission have lost maybe my value, and if I lose the position and I succeed in those issues, is my loss irredeemable?
The argument here in the second candidate is you have cases that are ongoing in court, right? Should you lose that case and we have made you chair, then you'd have to vacate the office of chair. His counter-argument is, yes, the case is ongoing in court, okay? If I am chair and I vacate office, the commission will have gained from my work up to that point, and then I will lose thereafter. But if you deny me the opportunity simply because I have an ongoing case in court, are you then denying me my right to apply and continue living my normal life?
Am I the only one who finds it strange that you could have proceedings in court that are criminal in nature? These are not civil, I'm assuming. And then be shortlisted to be the chairperson of the IEBC.
These are now the systemic issues that people are speaking about.
We also had 2 people on a ballot while they had crimes against humanity cases going on in The Hague. And then we get surprised when things end up the way they do. I find that very odd. Yes, you are innocent until proven guilty, but the question was right. Why would you put yourself in a position to put someone in a place of power where they have cases going on against them that could end up in a guilty verdict, right? Then you're in this very, very weird position. If there's a question on your integrity, it's okay to wait. It's okay to wait until you're proven innocent, and the next time you apply, and there will be another selection and you will get it after you have been cleared. But why the rush to be like, yes, I do have pending court cases, but let's just give me the job. If I'm guilty, I'll step away.
We'll figure it out as we go along. I think when we started okaying certain things, now we are living in the repercussions of them. It's become socially acceptable and normalized. That if somebody has a question of integrity, it's almost a non-issue now. It's like, a lot of us have those issues. Just watch it and
so these are political, and so on and so forth.
Something else that Mr. Ethekon had said, and I'm just quoting the Daily Nation, sometimes we disenfranchise marginalized groups through the way we conduct registration and voter education. I will ensure a rights-based approach to voter registration and voter education is employed. Such an approach will guide us in addressing specific needs of special groups. So that was an interesting interjection there to do with marginalized groups not fully feeling like they're part of an electoral process. Then, there's a lot of other bites here from some of those who were interviewed, which I think is interesting for people to follow up on, because it also gives you insights into the different spectrums that people come with for all of those who were interviewed for this, who were vetted for the position of IEBC chair, whether it's representation as a woman, whether it's representation from a marginalized group. I think those are all interesting insights to look into, just to give an insight into where this person is coming from, what then they want to bring to the seat and the table, and then how they want to be rallied behind. A lot of them have talked about integrity. Others have talked about, they've just spoken about different ways that they should be approached. Don't look at me as somebody who is like all of my other peers. Also look at what I bring to the table. Look at who is relying on my representation in order perhaps for us to have a different 2027 electoral process.
Right.
Youth leaders are up in arms over the shortlisted candidates for position of commissioner, right? And they even came out last week and they spoke and they said, if we look at the representation of the young people in the shortlist, this will also then mean that those who become commissioners will also just represent the same way in the percentage.
More or less, yeah.
Led by Alex Matere and Kidi Mwaga, they were expressing outrage and disappointment over what they term as a deliberate sidelining of competent young applicants. In a letter addressed to the selection panel, the group accused the panel of favoring individuals with tainted pasts and deep political affiliations while locking out deserving youth candidates. The protest letter highlights several concerns, including the sudden inclusion of new names in an addendum published on 14th of March, and which were not present in the long list released on March 6th. So, first of all, there was a list published. This is everybody who applied. And then, when it comes to the final list of those who were shortlisted, some names have now appeared somewhere. They have appeared out of nowhere. They've landed. They were not here, but they are here. And the youth leaders are saying, what does that mean? What is that talking about? In terms of a percentage of the young people who have been picked out, even the youth leaders were not clearly saying this is the number.
Yeah.
Right?
And I wonder why.
Because, well, like you said, the list initially as published was not showing the age.
The date of birth.
The date of birth of this particular person or the age. It's just showing the ID numbers. But maybe it's just a way of looking at ID numbers and wondering, what's the first digit on your ID?
A 3.
It's a 3? Is it?
2.
Mine is a 1. So you can see the age.
You can see.
Okay.
Intergenerational.
So just looking at, this is the long list.
Yeah.
Here it is. Look at them on the...
Time flies. I wish we had another hour.
Oh, slight correction on Robert Okumu's case. It is a civil case.
It's a civil case.
Yes, it's a civil case. So not a criminal case. Also, but we'll interrogate the certificates of good conduct later.
And all those things that are issued. If I just look at this, there's a 2, there's a 3, there's a 2. First digit of the ID. There's a 7, there's a 4, there's a 2, there's a 2, there's a 1, there's a 8, there's a 3, there's a 5. I think 5s and 7s are older, because like this one, Thomas Maus and Yakambi, the first digit is a 5, acquired a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Nairobi in 1984.
Okay.
So clearly, that is not youth, right? The one for 7 is Walubengo Waningilo, who is from Trans Nzoia, who got a Master of Arts from the University of Nairobi in 1995 and a Bachelor of Arts from the university in 1990. So 7 is now tutoe 7 kwa list ya youth. Na 5 kwa list ya youth.
Yes.
Na 1 pia tutoe kwa list ya youth.
Okay.
2 tuweka kwa list ya youth, because someone like William Otieno Okech got a master's degree in 2016, but a Bachelor of Laws from Kampala University and a postgraduate diploma in 2009. That's among your peoples.
A 2, we're closer?
Is closer to Jano. 2.
Youth is a state of mind.
Indeed,
for those with 2.
So we have got a couple of 2s and 3s here that we could say those the 2s and 3s are in that age bracket that then we should be considering youthful. How many of them are here? It will be interesting to actually watch these interviews because we will see whether they are youthful or not. We will see the agenda. Right? Then we will also see how they are responding to the questions, their grasp of the issues, their commitment to the job. You can, glean some of those things. And if we do these things and not just sit back and say, hizo vitu achana nazo, ashachagua.
2 things can be true, I think, is that we can hold out hope that something can shift, while also recognizing that we have, for the last few years, and especially in the last year, been presented with such an affront to our constitutional rights that you truly feel a bit jaded. Jaded meaning, somebody asked me the other day, what is jaded? I know what it is. You're numb. So I don't want to invalidate the people who are saying, I don't know about this process. Your jadedness is valid. But at the same time, we also can't move with that. We have to say, this is a new process. Who knows? Maybe this is a chance to try and shift things in the direction that we want to see an electoral process play out. Just as we're discussing here, and as Latif has emphasized, watch the interviews. Follow through with every step of the way up until 2027 and beyond. And then participate so intentionally every step of the way to say, you know what, now I know the ins and outs and I followed through. But those 2 truths can live together, can coexist.
We'll cross over shortly to this first candidate
to the thing you should
being
be
interviewed for commissioner of the IEBC. And remember, any of these commissioners could then be elected by their fellow commissioners to become the vice chairperson. So you're watching interviews for the vice chairperson and commissioner of IEBC. It's coming up next. Thank you for tuning in. Tomorrow morning, we'll be at the KICC. We'll be taking our mic to the ground to have conversations about biashara.
If you have a medium and small-sized enterprise, this is definitely for you. And because you're Kenyan, I know that is all of us. It is basically all of us. One hustle a day, we don't live like that. So watu wa biashara, tuko na ninyi leo kesho kwa ground. From 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. we'll be fixing the nation. Tupatane hapo kwa comments pia, hashtag ni fixing the nation and TV. Let us know what you thought. And if you have a shika mic for us for next week, pia tuambie.
Thank you.